Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the newest edition of the Quarantine Concert Series. I am your host, Kabir Segal, and it's a pleasure to be with you again for episode number 28. 28. We've done this every single night at 10 p.m. Eastern, and we're doing it religiously, I think, every night 10 p.m. Eastern, and on the weekends we're doing matinee shows at 3 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. So join us every night. You can watch us before you go to bed or watch us before you wake up, whatever cycle you're on. 3 points up top. Number one, why are we doing this? First, as you know by now, we're going through a national, international emergency. The recipe, the medicine is physical distancing, not necessarily social distancing, but staying away from each other physically. We can be social online. So we started this broadcast in earnest to put the spotlight back on the people who really, I think, deserve it, who are the artists, because so many people have had their gigs canceled, and anyone connected to live events has been negatively impacted as well. This is the artists, the engineers, the producers, the promoters, the bookers, everyone who's connected to live events and makes money or makes revenue and income from this way of life is being affected. So if you know someone who's an artist, reach out to them, buy their CDs, subscribe to their stuff on the streaming channels, their music on the streaming channels, and be there for them, because this is a time when we need to be close to the artists, because they're there for us, giving us their beauty and their music. Secondly, where are we broadcasting? Short answer is everywhere. We're on the Facebook, and we're on Twitter, and the Instagram cracker on IGTV, LinkedIn for all you vice presidents, senior vice presidents, associate vice presidents, software engineers, marketing professionals, and CEOs of companies who tune in on LinkedIn. We're there for the professional crowd as well, so we're interrupting your self-development as you scan through your LinkedIn feed. We really appreciate all the friends at LinkedIn who have partnered with us on this broadcast. And of course on YouTube. Please subscribe on YouTube. We just started a YouTube channel, so appreciate your subscriptions there so you get notified on the videos. And then thirdly, if you want to get on the broadcast and you're an artist yourself, please shoot me a message on Facebook or on Instagram. We do have a waiting list now, over 50 artists deep on the waiting list. We're trying to get through the waiting list as quickly and as thoughtfully as possible. You can see there the 27 shows that have come before, and you can watch us. The content lives online, so Facebook and LinkedIn treat this as premium content. So thank you again for partnering with us on this broadcast. So with that, one of the reasons, again, I like to host these concerts is because I get to check on people that I've kind of been in touch with over the years, and people who have been artists who have really been a big fan of, and that's the case especially tonight, because I've been a big fan of this artist, his songwriting, his craft, his ability to speak to multiple audiences across his genres and disciplines. And I've always enjoyed hearing his music, and he has a new album coming out, or it just came out actually, that we'll be talking about. You should all check it out because it's really done at the highest level. So please welcome to the show the wonderful Alastair Moock. Welcome.
Hey, Kabir, how are you?
I'm well. Welcome. How are you coping with this international pandemic?
I'm hanging in there, I would say, is how I'm coping. we're getting through, sometimes by the skin of our teeth, but yeah, we're good. I have two kids at home, and so we're trying to, pretend to homeschool during the days. It's all a big farce.
I hear you. That's a commentary in society, probably. What's the what are the gigs you've had to cancel? I want people to understand kind of the havoc, if you will, and the cancellations. How has that affected you and some of the gigs you've had to cancel?
Yeah, well, like all full-time musicians, I lost many gigs, at least half a dozen shows so far, and a school residency. I do a lot of work in schools also, and the CD release show for this album. So it was a particularly not great time to be releasing an album, but I'm definitely not the only one in this boat.
Yeah, have they been rescheduled or just waiting to see?
Postponed, but even the postponed. So we have a Boston CD release show where I'm based in, but even that one we moved it back to May 3rd, and at this point, I'm thinking we're probably gonna have to postpone again.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have lots of this stuff around? Hand sanitizer?
We do. We have a fair amount of hand
Good.
sanitizer. Yeah,
Do you have a special technique of how you do it?
small amounts
Yeah,
because we're gonna need it for a while.
that's true. This is like oxygen these days. All right. Well, thanks again for joining. What would you like to start your performance off with tonight?
Well, you mentioned this new album. It's called Be a Pain, and the full title is Be a Pain, an album for young and old leaders. And like most stuff in my career these days, it's kind of splitting the difference between my adult, grown-up music and the stuff that I do in schools and with kids. And hopefully, it's found some sort of happy medium in there. So why don't I sing this one? It goes like this. If you see something that's wrong, raise your hand and say that's wrong. Point it out and name that thing by its name. Don't stand by and stare. If it's wrong, it's your affair. Don't be quiet, make a riot, be a pain. Be a pain, be a pain. Shout about it and complain. Ignore the crowd and go against the grain. Don't be polite, raise your voice, do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. When Rosa Parks sat on that bus, she chose to make a fuss. She chose to break the rules and take the blame. Her choice to sit and fight helped to bring on civil rights, because one strong woman chose to be a pain. Be a pain, be a pain. Shout about it and complain. If they say you have to move, say I'll remain. Don't be polite, raise your voice, do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Harvey Milk, he chose to run for the council board and won, even though folks said you can't because you're gay. One brave LGBTQ elected leader ran and knew you can change things if you choose to be a pain. Be a pain, be a pain. Shout about it and complain. Tell 'em I won't let you make me feel ashamed. Don't be polite, raise your voice, do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. A tennis star named Billie Jean told the world she had a dream that men and women would be paid the same. She refused to hit that ball till there was equal pay for all. She was a king because she was a royal pain. Be a pain, be a pain. Shout about it and complain. If they refuse to pay, refuse to play the game. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain. Be a pain. Kids from Parkland led the fight for something they all knew was right. They said it's time for us to finally make a change. If adults can't compromise, we must go march for our lives. They spoke out and led the charge. They all were pains. Be a pain, be a pain. Shout about it and complain. When you're faced with laws you know are just insane. Don't be polite, raise your voice, do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain.
Yeah.
Oh, the crowd goes wild. Thank you.
They love you, man. They won't stop, I'm telling you. But they're very well trained too. I do this.
They cut off right when you tell them to.
See?
Beautiful.
Conductor. Beautiful, man. And it's so relevant. Tell me about this. It speaks to my heart about that streak of activism in the music. That Be a Pain reminds me kind of the John Lewis Good Trouble. He's been talking about, and Congressman Lewis, if you're watching, I know he's a congressman from a district right next to mine. he's going through some tough battle right now with
Yes,
cancer.
he is.
We
Yeah.
wish him all the best. But his mantra is good trouble. There's a thing of good trouble. So why do you embrace this idea of being a pain?
Well, you completely nailed it. John Lewis's "Good Trouble" is very much what I had in mind with that song and with this whole album. Um, you know, we're living in a time that requires action. That's not new. We've lived through many times that require action, but we're definitely in one of them. And in some ways, it's just ringing the alarm. I mean, systemic racism has been with us as long as we've been a country, so that's nothing new. But we have a president and a party that is willing to put that out there in very explicit terms. And
Mm-hmm.
the good part of that is that it ignites a response. And I think young people are paying attention in a way that my generation, probably our generation, really didn't. Growing up in the 70s, 80s, I think kids, certainly in the suburbs, were pretty tuned out to their own privilege, to policies, and the way they affected the rest of the country. And these days, we have this remarkable situation where the leaders of a lot of our great movements are teenagers. Greta Thunberg, Malala Yousafzai, these Parkland kids, and that's exciting. And I spend a lot of time in schools with older kids, middle school, sometimes high school and upper elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel an awareness from them that they understand sort of how critical some of these issues are.
Yeah. How much does technology play a part? Because the tools of teenagers can now express themselves with Twitter and Instagram, and they can, I don't know if they can ignite a social movement, but your ability to raise the spotlight on an issue that matters, it can be almost instant now with social media. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly it helps a lot with organizing and awareness,
Mm-hmm.
but it also, there's a big downside to it too, which is that disinformation
Yeah.
is probably wider spread than it's ever been. But I when I go into schools, I talk a lot about the history of social justice movements,
Wow.
and you talk about what it takes to organize. And one of the kind of themes of the programs that I teach are the ways that movements for social change have learned from the ones that come before them. So civil rights was informed to a large degree by the union movement, labor rights movement that came before it. That's where "We Shall Overcome" and a bunch of the other songs came from.
Right.
And people like Pete Seeger helped usher those songs into the movement. And then, of course, civil rights inspired everything that came after it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that movements for change learn from each other is how to organize. And of course now, you can let people know that there's a march, that there's a protest, that there's a boycott in a way that we've never been able to before.
Gotcha. Walk me through the tracks. We're going to put it up on the screen. Just kind of narrate through what the tracks are about, what the pieces are about. You don't have to tell me the lyrics, but
Sure.
I just feel like it resonates very much with me. My godfather's Andy Young, and who was the mayor of Atlanta. He wrote a book called "An Easy Burden," because he felt like it was a burden what they had to do, but it was almost like they were compelled to do it. They could not do it, right? And so this kind of music and that's why I've been such a big fan of yours, taking on these issues of great substance and import. Walk me through some of these pieces on the track on the album.
Yeah, sure. So "What Is a Leader" was one of the last songs I wrote that became the first song on the album. And one of the things that I learned I had a previous album that I think was probably when you and I first communicated. I made an album called "Singing Our Way Through" when one of my kids was diagnosed with cancer, and we started writing songs together, which seems like an impossible project, especially to write songs for kids. And I would have thought it was impossible too, but the songs came organically out of that experience. And one of the things that I learned from that was that, especially when you're writing for kids, there's a lot of value in not trying to answer every question that you pose. That you don't need to connect all the dots, that you can leave breadcrumbs and let your listener meet you halfway. So in this song, "What Is a Leader," I wanted to pose the question: what does a leader look like? what is a leader's skin color? What are they straight? Are they LGBTQ? You know, how do we define what does a leader look like? What do they talk like? What do they say? What kind of things would a leader say? And then my producer Anand Nayak and I had the idea that we would actually bring kids in to answer those questions in the track. So the music is interspersed with kids answering those questions spontaneously, and they say some pretty amazing things. You heard "Be a Pain." Everybody was a kid. I'm in this album. I was trying to connect the dots, which is largely what I do these days between kids and adults. And one of the things I talk with kids a lot about these days is that you don't need to wait to be a leader, right? That leadership starts when you choose to start being a leader. It starts every time you stand up for somebody who's being picked on, right? This bullying culture that we have in our schools, but we also have throughout our country, and even from the presidential podium, we live in a bullying society. And it takes courage to stand up and to cause some of that good courage. So I wanted to, in that song, talk about some famous leaders that kids might have heard of, like Martin Luther King, but also Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Mahatma Gandhi, and just present the fact that these people were all children once. They weren't born mythological people. They grew to become great leaders, and that leadership probably started when they were young, right?
Yeah. That's a good way of
that's
putting
important
it.
for
The
kids to
mythology kind of forms even after they've left us.
Right, definitely.
So, okay.
Well, I can only see the first tracks there, but there's a bunch of them. There's a song on there about Malala, which actually I had recorded a different version on a previous album, but it was so appropriate for this album, we wanted to record it again. And there's a song about Pete Seeger that I
Go Pete Go, is that his?
Go Pete Go, yeah, that I put to a traditional.
It really is a great album.
song.
I encourage everyone watching to check it out. And if you have kids, this is something you should, have them listen to and listen with them, because there's something for everyone on this album. Like you said it right. It's, message for young, but it's also a great reminder for those of us who are not kids to remember these are important lessons to adopt and to live by. So you really threaded the needle quite nicely on this.
Well, thanks, man. I've actually found it's been interesting that it's improved my political songwriting for adults, and even just being able to talk about stuff with audiences in particular. I tend to talk about the work that I did with kids, even in my grown-up shows, because there's something disarming about that. Adults, we all have these shells. We've all formed our opinions, and either we're preaching to the choir or we tend to be speaking to armor, right? Where people don't want. But when you talk about kids and the way that kids interpret this information and think about the world, I think it allows all of us to sort of lower our armor a little bit.
Totally.
And think in ways that are helpful to adults too. It's been helpful to me.
Ron San Miguel on the West Coast is asking, tell folks where they can buy the album. Where can they buy the album?
Thanks, Ron San Miguel. Well, you can buy it at my website, which is Moock Music, MOOCK music.com.
Cool.
And it's on iTunes and Spotify and all the streaming services that don't pay musicians very much money. But hey, I've got an iTunes account now too, because it's
cool.
The world is inevitable. So
right. What would you like to play next?
Why don't I do something that's a little more of a grown-up song, I guess.
Okay.
But you can see that all my music has kind of converged somewhere in a kind of spongy middle. One of my great songwriting heroes, John Prine, is sick in the hospital with this COVID-19 virus, and I did a show earlier this week, and I did a bunch of John Prine songs. And although this is my song, it's very much informed by all the years I spent listening to John Prine. My wife is like a little snoring pancake. I have to flip her several times a night. Her heart is warm as old Doc Miller's handshake. And if I should die tonight, it'd be alright. If this is what an illness is, I'm happy to be sick. There's a rubber wall around me, and I'm bouncing off of it. And if I go, I'll look back with a twinkle in my eye and say, this is what it is to be alive. My cat Pepper chases her own tail and looks at me like, what else can one do? I'm always searching for your trail as well. I'd chase you down to Perth or Kathmandu. If this is what the world is like, I'm glad to just be here, chasing after you as each year chases after year. And if we sink, I'll think before I take my final dive. This is what it is to be alive. How much heartache can one little heart take? How far can you bend a willow tree before the next tail makes our little cart break? I'm just glad you're here to ride with me. My little girl runs round the living room, picking up whatever she might see. I'm right behind her, running round there too. It's all a circle game for her and me. If this is what an ocean is, I'm glad to be at sea, bouncing off the wave like you come bouncing off of me. And if the darkness swallows us before the next we rise, this is what it is to be alive. Yeah, this is what it is to be alive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Very heartfelt and poignant. Thanks for writing that and singing that. So beautiful. You know, before you started the song, you talked a little bit about the spongy middle, and I want you to talk about how your path as an artist. You were writing for adults, you were writing for kids, and now you've converged. Why do you think your music has converged?
It's a good question. The kids albums that I made definitely grew up with my children. So I've now made 5 albums that you can, generally categorize as in the children's category, I guess, including this later one. But they've gone up with my kids. So the first one had belly buttons and cows on it. And as my kids got older, there was a real turning point when that Singing Our Way Through album happened, when my daughter was in the hospital. Because my heroes are, I'm very, I don't fit my time period. What's the right word for that?
Anachronism?
I'm an anachronistic guy, yeah.
Okay.
So Woody Guthrie, Mississippi John Hurt, Leadbelly, Pete Seeger, these guys really have kind of guided my music career. And all of them made music for both adults and kids. So I always had in the back of my mind that such a thing was possible. But I think the longer I've done this, the more possibilities I've seen for that there's really no kind of subject matter that you can't broach with children, but you have to find the right window in, So this album was the last kids album I made is was kind of my update of Free to Be You and Me, an album that definitely shaped me as a kid. Um, and I wanted to write about some of the gender and orientation issues that Marlo Thomas and friends didn't feel like they could broach in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly easier now. One of my kids defines themselves as gender non-binary, and so we've kind of had a whole learning curve in our family, learning about the trans and gender fluid community. Um, and so it's a constant learning process, but all of these things I think can find their way into music, whether it's for kids or adults.
Mm-hmm. Let's go. Yeah, tell us about this. This is the one I think I
This
listened
was
to.
the one when my daughter had cancer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a heavy one.
Yeah, but I think we found, I think we found a lot of joy on there, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that was surprising to people. And again, it came from learning, living through an experience, and so we discovered things that I couldn't have known otherwise. That there is, joy
Yeah,
in hospitals in between those sad times.
this is the cow one.
That's the first one I made, and then the last album I made before this current one, I went back to my kind of grown up singer songwriter
Yeah.
roots.
Well,
And
before we get to that, I
yeah,
want to
yeah,
ask you: did you see the Mister Rogers
yeah.
um,
Well, I
movie
didn't
or
see the
document?
feature film, but I saw the documentary. Yeah.
What did you make of that and his approach of communicating with children? Did it validate anything about your approach?
uh, I would say it less validated it than it taught me, because
Okay. Well, you take on you're for be a pain. They're like they're not. It's not exactly like they're heavy topics or they're important topics. So and you're talking
right,
to kids almost like adults in a way. You're not hiding from issues. You're
right,
facing them head on.
right. Yeah, no, I think that's right, and he did that so well. This broad category that gets called children's music, which I never thought I would get so deeply involved in, but it's become part of my career. It's actually very segmented, and there are people who focus uh, more on very young children. Um, and Mr. Rogers was great at that, but his stuff really was focused on young development. And I feel like I've learned a lot about that and gotten better at knowing how to learning some of those techniques and learning from him over the years. Um, but like I said, I also spent a lot of time with older kids, and that's another thing altogether.
Hmm.
Working with upper elementary and especially middle school is hell, and it was very scary when I started going into middle schools. But now I love it, and I think it's such an important age. That it's that time when kids are really forming their worldview, and you have an opportunity. A cynic would say to go in and brainwash that, and I've seen some of those comments from people on the right about some articles that have been written about my work with kids. But the truth is that I couldn't do the work I do in public schools if I didn't walk a very careful line. So I never talk about this particular president. I don't talk about the current administration. I talk about history,
Yeah.
and I let kids draw their own conclusions. But we're living in an age where just presenting basic facts
Yeah.
is kind of is subversive,
That's
because
what's so
people have
pernicious
their own
about.
version of facts.
Yeah, so it's pernicious about what's happening. I agree with you on you creating the art and leaving enough room for your audience to interpret what it means to them, and that's the whole communion between artist and audience. And so
Right.
I appreciate you doing that. But you're right, it's hard when even the basic facts are not in question, but some people question them. But anyway,
Well, that's
uh,
why it's so important to know our history, more
yeah, it's
important
true.
than ever, and why we need to look to people like John Lewis, who have laid all the breadcrumbs out for us.
Yeah,
They're there. He wrote those amazing books, that series um, of graphic novels called March,
yeah.
and left that legacy for us to pick up and discover.
Before you move on, Gina Kaju has a question. What album is the second song? The second song you just sang. What album is that on?
Sorry, I have a bit of ADD. Um, it's not on any album because I haven't recorded it yet, so it's only available here.
Yeah, it's an
I'd like to
exclusive.
get back to doing more of my grown-up writing. For a long time, I frankly kind of forgot how to do it.
Yeah.
And this last album I made with my friend Mark Aureli was the producer. Kind of, I finally remembered like what it takes to write honest, authentic songs for grown-ups. And the problem was that I wasn't being honest or authentic. I was
Yeah.
trying to write songs that I'd written in my 20s and 30s.
What would you like to play next?
Well, why don't I play one from that?
Okay.
Um, why don't I'll play this song, Hallelujah.
Okay.
Uh, I've always liked writing about death, fascinated by death. You know, it pervades all good old blues songs, most of old folk music. It's the great question that keeps us questioning, and therefore, I think, sort of being present in the moment. And while you can write about death with children, it is trickier. So it is nice to get back to just writing death songs for adults, even joyous ones like this. Hallelujah if I make it up this morning. Hallelujah if I leave my bed. Hallelujah, Lord, if you hear me call. Hallelujah, I ain't dead. Hallelujah if I feel the sunshine. Hallelujah if it warms my skin. Hallelujah if I'm feeling half fine. It's a miracle the shape I'm in. Yeah! Hallelujah for a cup of coffee. Hallelujah if I write 2 lines. Hallelujah if I ain't too off key. Hallelujah if them 2 lines rhyme. Hallelujah for my toes and fingers. Hallelujah for my big old feet. Hallelujah for a time, a rhythm and a roll. Lord help a white man keep the beat. Oh! Hallelujah, Lord, I'm in my 40s. Hallelujah, Lord, I'm middle-aged. Hallelujah if I found my car keys and made it up here on this stage. Hallelujah for one more evening. Hallelujah for another night. Hallelujah for a little rhythm. Hallelujah, praise the light. Oh, the words. That's middle age for you, people. Hallelujah if I make it up this morning. Hallelujah if I leave my bed. Hallelujah, Lord, if you hear me call. Hallelujah, I ain't dead.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I was proving my own point in that song by forgetting my lyrics. Thank you, man.
Let me know at what point the applause gets too uncomfortably long.
It feels a little like morning zoo show. I've never had an audience this big, so I don't know what it sounds like.
Oh, they can get bigger.
Give me a Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah. Yes. Question on Instagram coming in. What are you drinking right now?
Ah, a little red wine. I don't know
Good.
what. I'm
Is
at
it
a point
Franzia?
now.
Wine in a box?
No, it's still from a bottle. We're
Good.
we're not completely underground yet.
There's still room for us to slide. Okay, cool. Tell me tell me a little bit about your composition process. Like, I always like to ask, because you're broadcasting from home, is this where you write music? Is this where it's like, how do you put idea to paper? Do you have a notepad that you carry around? Do you have a lot of or saved drafts on your phone? What's your process?
I used to carry around notebooks. I'm sad to say that I, at some point, began being a technology guy and writing everything on my computer, which there's a real loss to that. I think I do save my drafts of things um, on on my computer for some, I don't. We all do this, right? We save our like our archives as if future generations. But
Yeah,
I always feel like I'll probably want to go back and look at that, but of course I never do.
yeah,
Um, I don't know. I'm a very undisciplined writer. Uh, I can go years between writing songs, and then I'll write a whole bunch in a row, and usually I need to sort of I motivate myself um,
yeah,
by putting out an album. That's a good way to to give yourself a deadline. It's an
yeah.
expensive deadline to create for yourself, but
Speaking about an
yeah.
archive, what would you like your future biographer to call your biography? Do you have a title that? Sorry to put you on the spot, but what would be, because you have such a creative, you live such a creative life, and you're so good with words. I'm wondering if you could think of a good biography from you.
Man, that's hard. To,
You-
I have such an unusual name. I feel like you'd want to play off the name.
It's a
I've done a little bit. I feel like I've been waiting. Someday I'm going to make an album called The Dark Side of the Mook. That's that's my goal in life.
Alistair is a very regal name, right?
Yeah, and there's no reason for it at all. My
No,
parents, uh,
you're not related to Cornelius Vanderbilt or something.
no, my
No, okay.
parents, no, it's ridiculous. I think they liked Alastair Cook's show on PBS in the '70s, so
Mm-hmm.
that's which tells you a lot about the stock I come from, I guess. And
No,
Alistair Sim, who was the great Scrooge.
yeah,
But no, I don't have really any British blood. My mom's Jewish. My dad's kind of a mixture of everything in Western Europe, and Mook is kind of a Dutch German uh, name, but it's a corruption. There's a town called Mook, Mook. So the C, we don't know how the C got in there. Somebody
got it.
snuck it in.
Sneaky C. That's what they say. It would have been real sneaky if there was an accent on it, but one of those. So tell me about this idea of house concerts that you have, and I want to put that screen up on the website. Tell me about why you enjoy doing home concerts and what's been the reception of your sort of advocating for them in a way.
Yeah, I've done quite a lot of house concerts over the years. I love the format because it takes it's intimate. Um, it it builds on you and I were talking a little bit before the thing about the kind of audiences that people have, and certainly for me and where I'm at in my career, I haven't gone real broad, but I also these days I don't even feel like I try to go broad. I try to go deep with the people that are interested in what I do. So those kind of connections to be able to go do something for people for whom it's special, for you to play music, and they bring their friends out from a economic standpoint. I think it makes a lot of sense for a musician kind of at my level, which is that I'm not splitting money with a club and all the overhead.
Mm-hmm.
There's a point in a career where people become really big, and it forces them into different venues. And it's actually interesting reading sort of through the history of popular music. A lot of musicians who I think really thrived in small venues, maybe not as small as somebody's living room, but at least like a club, as they become more and more popular, are forced into playing in giant theaters and then stadiums. um, I listened to an interview with Billy Joel, and he was saying he had to completely change the way he wrote music because the songs that had sort of gotten him to where he was at no
Mm-hmm.
longer worked for large. It's the What's the name of that? I know you'll know the name for it. That thing where you get promoted to the point where you're ineffectual.
Oh, that I don't know, but I need to know that.
There's some word for it in business where people who are good at what they do keep getting promoted
Oh, failing upwards.
until
I
they
don't
end
know.
up in something that they weren't good at in the first
Yeah,
place.
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I think That's
Not
good.
that that's true for everybody. Some people
Yeah,
really
yeah.
thrive on big, but I think there are some people whose music I love who they get to a point where it's sort of like I wish I could have seen them when they did what got them
Sure,
to where they are, you know?
sure, sure. Well, what's the format you usually perform with or perform in? Is it just yourself? Do you have people that play with you in a band in
Oh,
these house
yeah.
concerts?
Yeah, well, you can see in that picture that a trio is about as big as I go for most things, and frankly, I've kind of cut down on my side manning over the years, just out of financial practicality. It's you know, in order to have a sustainable career as a musician, I couldn't play with as many side people. Um, and while that's kind of a bummer in some ways because I love playing with other musicians, the other side of that is that it forces you to become a better performer on your own or in smaller numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no doubt that the music that I was first sort of the music that still turns me on the most, the music that made me want to do this, was music that came from people who were doing it more or less on their own or in small groups. So I think it's, you know, I I like that I've been forced to get better at playing on my own.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, cool. What would you like to play for your penultimate number?
Penultimate number. Well, why don't we go? So Be a Pain was kind of my meet you in the middle political type of song, a song with hope involved, which I think is important. When I write for just adults, one of the things that I have the luxury of doing is allowing myself to be a little more cynical and sarcastic and play with that part of my humor, you know. So this was a song that I wrote before the last election, while we were still on our way to that general election, and frankly, I had planned to put the song away, but the country's loss was my gain because I had one more song to put on an album. It's called Make It Great. Love it or leave it, it's us against them. We're gonna make it great once again. This once was the home of the free and the brave. We all had it good here, except for the slaves. When we came here, this country was pure and pristine. The skies were all blue and the trees were all green. We fought for the rights of the nation we'd build, and all here rejoiced, except the natives we killed. And then we built cities and roads and great ports, protected by brave men aloft in great forts. And then came the railroads that stretched to the seas. We all had it good, unless you were Chinese. Then Abraham Lincoln, the guy with the beard, said no more to slavery, so that disappeared. And that was the end of race problems. We know black people were equal, except for Jim Crow. Now the late 1800s were elegant, grand, Victorian houses and trust in the land. The right to your income and vote you possessed for all of us here, barring those who had breasts. Then depression and war kind of soured some years, but we all pulled together and got back in gear. Freedom secured in the home of the champs, offer not valid in internment camps. that's when things really improved. The GI Bill and your mortgage approved. Employment was high and the future was bright for everyone, all of us, if you were white. And that's what we mean by be great again. Let's get ourselves back to where we were when freedom, prosperity, peace all prevailed for the Caucasian, Christian, straight, middle-class male. Love it or leave it, it's us against them. We're gonna make it great once again. This once was the home of the brave and the free, the world's greatest nation. If you looked like me. Oh,
Great, man.
oh, there you are.
Yeah, that was awesome. Well done. And very actually kind of reflective on like people's stations in life. And how do you, I know we talked about it a little bit, but I want to talk about, do you ever feel like you're getting, like, you're picking a theme too heavy or too didactic? How do you know when you're being too didactic or when you're not? What's that line?
That's a great question, and it's the reason I couldn't write political songs for years and years. You know, my ultimate songwriting hero has always been Woody Guthrie, who I think's the best political songwriter in our country's history. And Woody has a remarkable ability to write empathetically, to put himself in the shoes of the people that he writes about, and make the listener feel like they're in the room with those people. I spent years, you know, I had political views. I wanted to write political songs, but they came out, like you say, didactic and preachy. And, you know, some people may feel like that song is too, but for me, the window that has allowed me to write politically, well, first is humor. I think humor helps put some guards down, and especially if there's some humility in that writing and some self-mockery, it allows the listener hopefully to be willing to hear what you have to say. But then the other is in writing, you know, in the work that I've done with kids, one of the things that I've learned too is that, you know, these times that we're living through can feel hopeless. But you can't afford hopelessness in working with kids. So you have to figure out a way to be hopeful. And that's, I like, you know, anything that challenge you as a songwriter, any sort of boxes or rules or things that you set for yourself are helpful, that kind of discipline. So knowing that in writing something political for kids, I need to find some way of bringing some sunshine in, of allowing some sort of hope and possibility is useful, because it forces you as a writer to, you know, to not get lazy, and it's easier to kind of be hopeless.
Totally. By the way, if you're watching on Instagram, I think we've lost audio on Alastair's side, so just click the link on my bio, hop over to the Facebook or the Twitter or the YouTube. You'll hear the rest. And before we play your last one, I do want to put up where people can find you, and you also have a store where you can get Moock shirts. Do they come in all sizes?
They do,
Okay.
although I'm running low on certain sizes, so.
Yeah, so let's sell them out. Don't worry about the Instagram. Let's sell them out. For those of you watching at home,
But
check
there
out
are
his
adult
website.
sizes too. Yeah.
Yeah, check that out. He also has his albums out there. His albums, the links to Bandcamp on his website, moonmusic.com. And you know, become a fan. Invite him to your house. He's very house and pet friendly. And
I'm house trained.
House trained. He likes red wine, so we know what his rider includes. So some nice, not wine in a box, but nice red wine. And what would you like to play for your final number?
Well, let's play something kind of peaceful. This is a song. Let's think. Where is this song? about living in the moment. Will we sign off on this one? Should I say my thank yous? Because
Yeah, I mean,
thank you for having me. I
pleasure.
really appreciate you doing this. And
Yeah, man, it's always a pleasure.
you've got an amazing crew here. I don't know if your audience at home knows that.
Yeah.
That you're well stocked in people who know what they're doing. It's been a learning
Exactly.
curve for me.
We're gonna put up their website right after you sing.
Good,
so
good,
I
good.
give my final sayonara after my final thanks.
Camilo's great. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Walk on down the street, follow your own feet, listen to your heartbeat and forget the things you know. Breathe on in the air, the evening is your prayer. Just let yourself be there, walking down the road. This world is just a dream, floating down a stream. The moment is the only thing you need. Stop fighting against the current. The things that you've determined, they aren't, and they weren't, and they're never gonna be. Think about the fact that you're just a little speck, a fleck upon an acorn in an ocean's raging storm. In the scheme of time and space, you leave no lasting trace. The troubles that you face have no memory or form. This world is just a dream, floating down the stream. The moment is the only thing you need. Stop fighting against the current. The things that you've determined, they aren't, and they weren't, and they're never gonna be. The simplicity of Darwin, the flowers in the garden, the molecules of carbon, and the things you never see are just below the surface of this agitated circus. Stop searching for a purpose when the point is just to be. This world is just a dream, floating down a stream. The moment is the only thing you need. Stop fighting against the current. The things that you've determined, they aren't, and they weren't, and they're never gonna be. They aren't, and they weren't, and they're never gonna be. A standing O. Or maybe he's just leaving. Ah, beautiful. I don't get flowers very often, I have to admit. You don't bring me flowers.
You were saying?
I say, I remember when you used to bring me flowers. It's changed.
They're fresher. They're fresh and clean. I'm just gonna keep the applause track going underneath us to clap us out.
Great.
I would like to give a round of applause, of course, to you, Alastair. I think you're such a virtuosic musician, and you write and you sing from the heart, and it's so touching to
Thank
know
you, man.
that you're out there creating music for people of all ages. So keep doing what you're doing, and good luck with the album. Really
Thank you.
wish you all the best with it. For those of you watching at home, I also want to give a shout out to Sandra and Camilo for the incredible tech team. Put your website up on the screen. These are incredible people. They help every artist with the technical setup. So a big round of applause for Sandra and Camilo. If you're an artist and need any kind of music services, check out their website. They're open for business. They can work remotely, and just friendly people. So let's work together. And that's it. Thanks for everyone for watching. We'll be back 10 p.m. Eastern tomorrow with Ali Bello, a great Latin violinist. So all genres are welcome. And this is like Noah's boat. We want 2 of every genre. So Noah's Ark. So see you tomorrow. God bless, and everyone stay healthy.